the 4 statements that lead to wisdom are, I don't know, I need help, I'm sorry, and I was wrong.
Hello, Wolfpack fans. Today, our guest is someone who has shaped leaders, inspired innovators, and worked from the university to the boardroom, and someone I am grateful to call both a friend and a mentor. Dr. Jackie Olich. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So glad you're here. So Jackie brings a remarkable blend of experience from building and scaling companies to supporting early stage ventures as an angel investor to guiding executives through complexity and growth. She is the founder of VESA Alliance Management, where she advises high-impact startups and senior leaders. She is an award-winning mentor and leadership coach, and Jackie believes in investing in people and ideas that shape the future, especially women-led businesses. Her career is a masterclass in agility, purpose-driven leadership, and turning uncertainty into opportunity. And we are thrilled to have you here. Welcome to Engineering Pack Pod.
Thank you. Thank you.
How'd you like that intro?
Wow. I got to live up to that. Okay.
Did I do a good job? How about VESA? Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, usually I lean into the Z a little bit more. My dad's originally from what used to be Yugoslavia, what's now Croatia, and VESA is a Slavic root. The word usually translates as connection, link, or relationship. So that's why I chose it.
I like that symbolism. So VESA. Good. I'm glad you corrected me on that. Well, I told a little bit about your story. Is there anything else you want to add for our listener that you think is important? And then we'll dive into this chat.
I think one thing that might be of interest to add, Marcy, is that I am a cultural historian by training and then an entrepreneur by experience. And that particular combination really shapes how I think about innovation.
I'm glad you added that. It is great when I talk to guests who have done something that they probably never dreamed when they were studying back in the day, history, that they'd be doing now, and the twists and turns of life. Because I talked about how you have turned uncertainty into opportunity. How has that recently happened for you with starting this company?
Well, I think, my whole journey and each chapter has taught me something about how ideas move or fail to move across institutions. I mean, I started out at a privately held family medical diagnostics business when I was a teenager that my dad and I helped scale and grow and eventually sell to Halma PLC. And then I spent years in academia as a faculty member and an administrator at UNC Chapel Hill. And then later I founded the Office of University Collaborations at RTI International, which used to be at the time a $1 billion research institute. And all of these paths, I think, really led me to VESA. And the idea that my work now intersects in that kind of, that crossroads of technical innovation, business strategy, and the human capacity to build something meaningful out of uncertainty.
And that ties in uncertainty. So for all of the folks listening who are uncertain, because these are uncertain times, what would you tell them to calm the nervous system down?
Well, I would tell them that what they're feeling and what they're experiencing is not unique to them. And it's also not unique in terms of the human experience or recent history. I was just at a meeting last week at the National Academies of Sciences in Washington, D.C. It was a joint summit between the National Academies government, university, industry, philanthropy research roundtable, and the National Science Board. And I think my secret sauce or what I added there was just some perspective. Like, we have had historically shifts and cycles of research investment and reinvention and recalibration and change across history. So really what everyone's feeling right now is very much part of being human and being engaged.
And that is what we like to normalize here is being a human is challenging and there are struggles and you will get through the struggles. So I'm glad you tied in the history to that. And you're not alone is what I'm hearing.
I would add, I was thinking about this on my drive over from Chapel Hill today. I often find not only examples and inspiration in history, but also in literature. You know, I'm a big reader, Marcy. You know me and my books. And I was just finishing up a book that I absolutely loved by one of my favorite authors, Louise Penny. And I was reminded in Louise Penny, you know, she's a Canadian author. She lives outside of Montreal, and she writes about the French provinces. She writes about Canada, but she also writes about the Northeast of the U.S. And she has a character who always, Armand Gamache in there, who always talks about his 4 rules and how you can't control outcomes and you can control your process and how you always have to return to the fundamentals when you feel like you're stuck or you're feeling a block. And he talks about how the 4 statements that lead to wisdom are, I don't know, I need help, I'm sorry, and I was wrong.
Whoa, drop the mic. That's incredible and simple to remember. And I follow you on Goodreads, so I will absolutely be getting that book.
It's simple and basic, but it's really, I think it's like the foundation of resilient leadership. I think when like leaders and teams can say these things freely, or students talking to their advisors or faculty members, when they can see those things freely, they build trust and keep learning. But when they can't, small problems become crises. Like, for example, like the Challenger disaster is a powerful reminder, what happened at NASA when organizations suppress dissent or doubt. When people can't say, I don't know, or I'm worried about this, then that's when we really have trouble.
And I love the I need help one because I think as students, there is this perfectionist addiction, and asking for help is somehow a stigma that I should have known the answer to that and I should have figured it out. But mentors are actually flattered when you ask for help, I think.
I do, and I think that's what leads to meaningful work.
Yes, I ask you for help all the time. As a matter of fact, we're getting lunch after this, and you will be. You're on my board of directors forever. I'm sorry. I will keep asking.
I love it. I love being right there.
Let's talk about storytelling a little bit. So you've been doing advising with startups and founders. How does storytelling shape innovation and leadership?
Well, I think this is really key. I think the ability to tell a story really means everything. I think, like, for example, for, students that are pursuing graduate work that may last many years, or people who are founding a startup, you're asking people to believe in something that doesn't exist yet. So you need to be able to tell a story. You need to be able to take someone on this journey with you. And I think like the best founders that I work with, the most successful founders, understand that data informs belief, but story sustains it. And storytelling isn't decoration, it really is strategy. So you can use storytelling and narrative to clarify vision, align teams, and then turn complexity into momentum. Like, for example, when I started Veza, my story was pretty simple. I'd sat in enough different seats and worn enough different hats that I saw patterns. And sometimes I realized people were missing those patterns. And I could help translate across the barriers or the chasm sometimes that hold innovation back. Because story also reveals gaps. If you can't articulate where your idea came from, who it serves, and why now, something fundamental is still unresolved. And inside organizations, shared stories are culture. So say, for example, like at a place like SpaceX, where my son used to work, people talk about rockets at lunch because they're living the same story. And that shared narrative is what turns work into purpose.
Ooh, that's important. Purpose. As we think about purpose and innovation and this whole entrepreneurial mindset, I'm curious about your thoughts on this Keen Network, which is a new grant that we've received in the College of Engineering. And they talk about this whole idea of curiosity, making connections, and creating value through open-ended exploration. I know that was a mouthful. How do you see those principles showing up in high-performing, innovative teams?
I see it all the time. I think like if story builds meaning, the entrepreneurial mindset builds motion. And the best teams treat uncertainty as information, not failure, and approach it with curiosity. So they're curious about what they don't know and humble enough to seek help from maybe unexpected places. And they connect disparate ideas and read outside their field. They ask, like we talk about, Marcy, those like what if questions that sound naive until they spark insight. So like as a historian, I see it like some people, some disciplines are trained to think convergently, like engineers, accountants. And then some people, like historians or artists, may be trained to think divergently. And I think you need both. You need to be able to hold both of those types of approaches where innovation happens. I remember like the entrepreneurial mindset doesn't ask what's the right answer. It asks what's the right question.
And I'm wondering for a grad student or an early researcher at the beginning of their career, the rewards are often precision, not possibility. What advice would you give them?
Well, I see that all the time. One of my sons is in graduate school for engineering, and I learn so much for him. And I think what I think is always really interesting is something along the lines of how technical brilliance may solve a problem elegantly, but real innovation driven by curiosity is what changes lives and solves problems that people actually have. So I would encourage the student to always think about context, because I've seen just extraordinary research stall because inventors couldn't explain why it mattered. So that's that storytelling, that ability to communicate. Why does it matter? And I think sometimes you're trained to optimize for precision, which you need. I mean, we get in an aircraft or we drive on a bridge, we are grateful and indebted to the precision of all of the engineers that contributed to this. But the world also needs relevance. So I think a breakthrough may be publishable or patentable, but like, for example, for a founder, that doesn't make it a company. So a company needs a business model, a market, someone who cares enough to pay for it. And here I think it's fun for graduate students and young people when they think back in history. I think a really interesting example is someone like Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison knew I mean, his genius wasn't just the light bulb. It was realizing people needed an entire electrical system to make light useful in their homes. I mean, now it's like so basic for us, but really was revolutionary. So he didn't just invent, he built infrastructure. So when I work with founders, even when I work with, I talk with friends or things like that, I always go back to 19th century Russian novelist Tolstoy. In a short story he has 3 deceptively simple questions. So in my house, I do this with my kids, I do this with my husband, I do this with my clients. The 3 questions by Tolstoy always are: who is the most important person? What is the right thing or the most important thing to do? And when is the best time to act? So for innovators, that kind of segues into whose problem am I solving and why does it matter to them? So I think when you answer these types of questions, you start to become a translator who carries those insights across boundaries.
I like that a lot. I'm learning so much. So, as we talk about all this uncertainty, can you think of an example of a time when uncertainty was actually a catalyst and not a barrier? Because sometimes when you're just not sure what to do and progress is slow, it's hard to be resilient.
It can be hard to be resilient. I think history is always instructive here. I think I was just listening to another podcast that I really like called Acquired, and they were talking. The hosts were going over the history of the Rolex and matching up, pun intended, the history of Rolex against the timeline of other world events. And I think, like, for example, they were talking about at the beginning of, like, well, you saw this in like the second Boer Wars in South Africa, but really at the beginning of the First World War, there was so much uncertainty across tariffs, supply chains, but there was a need for coordination, a need for precision. And that was part of what propelled, we used to get time through people used to tell time through the pocket watch, which is like, the early antecedent of our iPhone. But people needed the immediacy and the ability to synchronize and having time on their watch. And I think that's always just such an interesting example. Like when you think about World War I, you usually think of memorials, you think of All Quiet on the Western Front, great literature, great suffering, but there also was a need for innovation, and there's so much disruption on so many different levels. So that was actually one of the things that spurred us having watches on our wrist.
I'm glad you explained that history to me. You've always got these nuggets, dropping them right and left. Well, with this whole idea about innovation and storytelling, I wonder if there are thoughts you have about how engineers can develop these communication skills to be innovative, to be able to tell their story. And sometimes that's tough for them because their strengths may lie more in the technical side than, let's say, the interpersonal skills.
I think what's really important is first, you need to know yourself. So, for example, if you're going into the study of engineering and maybe you are trying to determine through your courses, through your internships, by working with your mentors, do you belong in deep R&D or do you belong in external facing work? And I think you need to try different things to learn these things about yourself. Neither's wrong. The most important thing is that you need to know yourself. I think in a lot of ways that's what learning to translate between different spaces and different contexts. what's key for engineering students and for really for everyone is to calibrate to the right level of detail for your audience at that moment. And I think like engineers talk about abstraction layers, simplifying complexity. So each level can understand what it needs without necessarily being overwhelmed by the amount of detail and complexity that lies underneath. And that's a skill. And that's a skill that people can hone. And communication works the same way. I think ultimately the difference between being right and being understood and deeply understood lies in whether you can tell the right story for the room that you're in.
And that is a hard thing to know.
It's a hard thing to know.
Is it experience that you gain that ability to do, or practice?
I think that one thing that I encourage mentees to do is to read widely, to go to museums, to go to galleries, to be in nature. And I think also to go to plays, to just listen, talk with people of different disciplines and different generations and different ages and stages, and kind of make a commitment to be a lifelong learner about people in general, because you can create the most amazing invention or have the greatest idea, but if nobody wants it or needs it, that's how you get into, Mary Shelley, Frankenstein territory. So I think that communication works the same way. I think also another thing that engineers can do is have some humility and reverence for what came before them. I remember my son was telling me a story, and he was saying that, he made all of the rookie mistakes in his first internship, and he could see the senior engineers just pursing their lips and creating space so the interns could each viscerally learn those lessons. And once they had absorbed that, then the senior engineers could help them make sense and aggregate those lessons and then think about their next steps.
All right, one word answer. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
We're going to challenge you here.
Okay.
What is one leadership superpower you think is underrated?
One leadership superpower I think is underrated in one word is it's hyphenated. Self-awareness.
You said that a second ago, and I'm glad you said it again. Knowing yourself. That is so important. I'm really glad. Bold underscore all caps to that. All right, next one is you get to pick one of these words: build, mentor, or invest. Which one gives you the most energy right now?
Mentor, but I would make an argument that I think all three of them are linked and connected.
I love it. All right, now you're going to like this one, Jackie. And I did not tell you this question, so it is a big surprise.
I'm ready.
You get 1 free hour each week with any founder, leader, living or dead. Who do you pick?
Okay. I would pick Dr. Gertrude Cox.
We have a building here on
Not only because I'm at NC State, but because she just, the more I learn about her, the more she inspires me.
Wonderful answer. All right. Now, our final time machine question. So right at this moment, your future self gets out of the 2035 time machine and sits next to Dr. Jackie Olich, and says, "You need to hear this right now. I've come from the future to share a message with you." What does she say?
She would say, "You're doing great. You're killing it. You're having an impact. Keep doing what you're doing."
That's a wonderful way for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Marcy. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
We had fun. Woo-woo!
Go Pack.
I love it. And that was a good high five, too.